They came in like they owned the place, doors swinging, voices echoing, coolers thumping on the gravel. I spotted them from my porch, for strangers unloading paddle boards beside a parked minivan just outside my private gate. They stepped past the private property sign without a second glance, laughing and chatting about their perfect day at the lake. I sat down my coffee and made my way toward them. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my tone even, "this is private land. The lake isn't open to the public." A woman in designer sunglasses blinked at me like I'd spoken in code. "But we booked this online," she said, pulling out her phone. "Paid $75 for the day. Look." There it was, a glossy confirmation screen from something called Peaceful Waters Lake Access. My gut twisted. That was my lake, my land, and I'd never authorized any kind of bookings. "Where exactly did you book this?" I asked. She tapped through her screen and landed on the Riverside Estates HOA community page. The listing claimed lake access was a new amenity for residents and guests. Of course, Riverside Estates. And I already knew exactly who was behind this stunt. My name is David Thornton. I've owned this 100-acre ranch for 15 years, nestled within it a pristine 20-acre lake, untouched, private, and mine. The property borders the sprawling Riverside Estates HOA, which has been both a buffer and, more recently, a battlefield. 6 months ago, the HOA crowned a new president, Patricia Hartwell. Most people just called her Karen, and not kindly. She was sharp-suited, silver-haired, and carried herself like a small-town tyrant. From the moment she took over, her eyes locked on my lake. She began with subtle hints during community meetings I'd attended as a courtesy. "Wouldn't it be wonderful," she'd say loudly, "if the community had more amenities, like, say, lake access?" All eyes would drift to me. I always smiled and politely declined. That lake was my refuge, home to native fish and nesting birds I'd spent years protecting. But Karen didn't take no for an answer. Her efforts escalated, formal letters on HOA letterhead suggesting community events at the lake, uninvited visits with committee members eager to pitch their case. I turned them away each time, but now this online listing was a whole new level of insanity. After apologizing to the bewildered family and sending them on their way, I stormed back inside. On the HOA's website, I found it, a sleek booking page, complete with stolen photos of my lake, pricing tiers, and fake reviews touting peaceful surroundings and great fishing. It claimed a partnership between the HOA and local landowners to enhance community value. The contact listed: Patricia Hartwell. I printed every page and called my lawyer, Janet Morrison. "She's charging people to access your land," Janet's voice snapped with disbelief. "David, this is textbook fraud, trespassing, unauthorized use of private property. Want to go scorched earth?" "Let's start smart," I replied. "What's our best angle?" "Let me dig," Janet said. People like her usually leave a trail. While she investigated, I got busy. More families arrived, booking confirmations in hand. I politely turned them away, logging names and dates. I installed motion sensor cameras and gathered video evidence. Meanwhile, Karen emailed me with a smug message: I was selfish for hoarding the lake and hurting property values. Then Janet called. "You're going to love this," she said. "The Millers are selling their 5-acre lot, the one that sits between you and Karen. That lot was key, it was the only viable access to the lake from Riverside Estates. Whoever owned it controlled the gateway. What are you thinking?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm thinking offense," Janet replied. "We can buy it anonymously. I have a contact who sets up LLC purchases." I created an LLC, Pine Valley Investments, and submitted an all-cash offer $20,000 over asking. The Millers accepted immediately. Within 2 weeks, the deal closed, and Karen had no idea who the new neighbor was. The next morning, a construction crew arrived at 7 a.m. to install an 8-foot privacy fence along the edge of the lot, perfectly legal, perfectly obstructive. The first storm hit at noon. Karen's SUV came barreling up the road and screeched to a stop. She exploded out of it, her face already crimson. "What is the meaning of this?" she shouted at the foreman. "You can't block lake access." The foreman, Roberto, didn't flinch. "Just doing what the property owner requested. All permits are in order." "Who owns this land?" she demanded. "You'll have to speak with Pine Valley Investments." "I know it's David Thornton," she screamed. From my porch, coffee in hand, I watched it all unfold on the security feed. The next few hours were priceless. Karen made a dozen frantic calls, to the county, to the real estate office, even to the police. All she got was confirmation that the fence was legal. By evening, she'd traced the LLC back to its registered agent, Janet. Her voicemail was pure rage. "This is harassment. That fence is illegal. I'll sue." Janet laughed when she played it back. "Want me to respond?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see how far she goes." Saturday arrived with fireworks. A dozen families showed up for their Lake Day, only to find the gate blocked by the new fence. Karen had to refund everyone out of pocket, stammering excuses while trying to avoid their glares. But the climax came Monday when I received a formal notice from the HOA. They accused me of blocking community access and demanded I remove the fence. They'd even called an emergency board meeting for Wednesday. Perfect. That night, I arrived at the community center with Janet and a thick folder of evidence. The room was packed. Karen sat at the head of the table, radiating smug authority. "Before we begin," I said, rising, "let me clarify something. That fence? It sits on property I purchased legally through Pine Valley Investments." Karen blanched. "Yes, I bought the Miller lot," I continued, "which means I control access, just like I control access to my private lake, outside your HOA jurisdiction." I passed out documents. Screenshots of the fraudulent listing, the fake reviews, the bookings. These are records of people charged money to use my lake. Unauthorized. Illegal. Murmurs spread through the board, faces turned grim. "These are 37 signed witness statements from people who were scammed," I continued. "Here's footage of trespassing, and here's an email from Miss Hartwell calling me selfish." Thomas, one of the older board members, looked up. "Patricia, did you do this?" Karen opened and closed her mouth. "It was for the community." "It's my land," I said. "And where did the money go?" Dead silence. Sandra, another board member, asked, "Patricia, did you keep the booking fees?" "They were administrative fees." Karen insisted. "I was going to transfer them." "Show us the deposits," Thomas said. Karen's face turned purple. Janet stepped forward. "We're prepared to press charges, fraud, trespassing, theft, harassment. But we're open to alternatives if the board acts." What followed was pandemonium. Board members shouted over each other, demanding Karen resign. She pounded the gavel, screeching for order, but no one listened. The vote to remove her was unanimous. But her fall didn't stop there. Word spread. Her part-time real estate agency opened an ethics investigation. Families demanded compensation. And 2 weeks later, a process server arrived on my dock. He looked confused. "Are you Patricia Hartwell?" "No, this is my land." "Oh," he said, checking his files. "This lists her new address as this lot." That's how I learned Karen had panic sold her home at a loss and tried to buy the Miller lot from Pine Valley Investments. She'd submitted an offer to Janet, who declined, citing long-term plans. The process server found Karen at her mother's house. She was facing 17 counts of fraud and deception. 3 months later, she pleaded guilty to lesser charges, probation, 500 hours of community service, and $23,000 in restitution. Her final appearance in Riverside Estates was to collect her belongings. Roberto, now installing a custom gate, watched her sit in her car for 20 silent minutes, staring at the fence that ruined her reign. I kept the Miller property and turned it into a nature preserve, native trees, butterfly gardens, and a sign on the fence that now reads, in elegant script, private property.